Welcome, everybody, to Behind the Deep State. And today we're going to do something different. We're going to talk to one of the top experts on the subject that we're dealing with, and that is Kamala Harris, who is, of course, running for president. And we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but I think by the time this is all over, you'll have a very clear picture of what we're dealing with. Something that the fake media doesn't want to talk about, something that the fake media doesn't want you to know about. There are very powerful forces behind the scenes that are working to bring Kamala Harris into place for very nefarious reasons. And there are very powerful forces that are working to obscure her background so that you don't know what you're voting for when you go into the voting booth. And joining us to discuss all of this is my friend Trevor Loudon. He is an author. He's a filmmaker. He's an incredible public speaker. Everywhere I go, he gets standing ovations. He's actually from New Zealand, but he seems to care more about the future of our country than the vast majority of Americans. And he has been studying the communists, the Marxists, the global terrorist effort to take over humanity for decades now. And he's got a huge footprint when it comes to influence and exposing all of this. And he's got a book that could not be more relevant to what we're facing today in America. Again, it's called Stealth: Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. You can get a copy on Amazon. Trevor, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with Kamala Harris and who she really is. You've done a deep dive into her background, things that almost nobody knows, things that the media doesn't want you to know. But she's been very closely tied to communists, even all the way back to her parents, who were closely tied to communists. So give us some sense of who Kamala Harris is and her background.
Well, look, most Americans who go radical get radicalized in college. Kamala Harris was radicalized in the cradle. You know, she has always been involved with communism right from the very beginning. Her father, Don Harris, was a Marxist economist from Jamaica who was specifically recruited to Stanford University because they didn't have enough Marxists in the department at the time. So he was an affirmative action Marxist. Her mother, Shyamala Gopalan, came from an Indian revolutionary family. And she helped to bring about the book Black Marxism, which is, you know, the foundation of the Black Panthers and Black Marxism, etc. They were both members of the Afro-American Association, a radical group in Oakland in the early 60s. They openly supported Mao Zedong, Fidel Castro, Ho Chi Minh, and that group was basically the seedbed of the Black Panther Party, which was a Maoist pro-China communist group. And so that's where she came from as a young woman. Kamala Harris, as a young girl, you know, elementary school, every Thursday night she would go down with her mother to the Rainbow Sign, a radical Marxist-aligned social club. So where your kids were going to Girl Guides or Boy Scouts, she was going to hear Marxist poets, communist poets in this radical club. And so that continued all the way through her high school in Montreal, her coming back to the Bay Area to study law at the university there. So she's been a communist since the cradle, and it hasn't stopped. She is still that way today.
That's incredible, and that's what they call a red diaper baby, a child Absolutely. Of communist parents.
Red as can be, diaper baby.
That's amazing. Now, one of the people you talk about in the book is Steve Phillips, and I would wager, if I were a betting person, that very few of our viewers, very few of our listeners know who he is, and yet he has been, you say, instrumental in bringing not just Kamala Harris up through the ranks, but also many others, including Stacey Abrams, Cory Booker, Barack Obama. Who is this guy? Where did he get all his money from? And what is his interest in promoting communists, Maoists, revolutionary socialists into positions of power?
Well, because Steve Phillips in the 1980s was a Maoist radical at Stanford University. He is a black guy, a law student. And he was very heavily involved in Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, which Jesse Jackson ran twice for president. The idea was to unite all the minorities to form a majority. And that idea came from the Black Panther Party of Chicago. But Steve Phillips, in the 90s, many of his friends went into the Democratic Party, into the nonprofits, the legal profession, even business, to work for China. Now, he went into the Democratic Party, but he married into one of the richest families in San Francisco, the Sandler family, who owned the Golden West Savings and Loan Company. And they sold their business for $12 billion to Wachovia, and it was so full of subprime mortgages that Wachovia went broke. But they got $2 billion, and they put $1.3 billion of it into the progressive movement, and Steve Phillips was the one who was handing it out, which gave him huge influence inside the Democratic Party. They funded the Center for American Progress, ProPublica, and they also set up the Democracy Alliance in 2005. Steve Phillips went to Atlanta, where he met with George Soros and Tom Steyer and Norman Lear and many other left-wing billionaires, the deep state really, to set up the Democracy Alliance, which has handed out billions of dollars to left-wing causes ever since. So that's what got Steve Phillips wealthy. And Steve Phillips was the man who gave us Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum, who almost won the governorship of Florida. And I can explain how he got Barack Obama into the presidency. And Kamala Harris is his girl. She is his puppet. He made her this very wealthy Maoist.
Wow, it's amazing. And so where does Willie Brown fit into all this, the former mayor of San Francisco? I mean, it's pretty well known now that he was a married man and having, I guess, an affair with Kamala Harris. But where does Willie Brown fit into this picture?
Well, this was the thing. The big scandal was their age difference and the fact that Willie was still technically married. He dated Kamala in about 1994, 95, when he was running for mayor of San Francisco. But the real scandal should have been that Willie Brown was and is a Communist Party supporter. He was first elected to the California state legislature in the early 60s by the W.E. Du Bois Club, the youth wing of the Communist Party USA. He was very active in communist causes in the 60s with his very close friend Dianne Goldman, who some of you may know as the late Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. But Willie Brown was still sponsoring Communist Party causes as late as 2002, and then he moved with Dianne Feinstein to become Communist China's biggest enabler in the Bay Area. He's their man. Him and Dianne Feinstein and Rose Pak, a Chinese agent, really brought the Chinese into San Francisco, into Sacramento, and helped to bring them into Washington, D.C. So, you know, Kamala got involved with Willie. Willie introduced her to all the right people. And she was also involved with Steve Phillips. So through Steve Phillips, she got to know all the radical left-wingers on the ground and all the movers and shakers at the top levels. The Barack Obama movement and the Kamala Harris movement is a collection of far-left billionaires and street-level Maoist radicals. The street-level guys like Black Lives Matter, etc., they get her elected, they do the grunt work, and the rich guys, the rich Maoists like Steve Phillips and his friends in the Democracy Alliance provide the money. And they're all tied back to China. It all goes back to China.
Wow. So on this subject of China, more and more it's coming out in the news now that Walz, the governor of Minnesota, has a lot of China connections. Of course, we know now congressional investigators have revealed that Joe Biden and the Biden family is receiving huge payments and has been for a long time from CCP front companies. What's the deal? How significant is China in all of this? And why, maybe even more important question, why is the American establishment so comfortable with this? Like, why isn't the American media talking about this? Why aren't the political leaders exposing this? I mean, what is going on with this?
Because China owns the American media. That's why. You know, big tech wants the Chinese market, so they'll do anything the CCP tells them. Sport is woke because professional sport relies on Nike, and Nike is in bed with China. China has bought so many American politicians and so many media companies and so many Wall Street people. like the left loves China because China's communist. The globalists love China because that's their enforcement arm. The many of the wealthy love China because they make tons of money with China. So you got the communists love China, the globalists love China, and big business loves China. So there's very little any of all the power centers. Most of them are in bed with China. They're compromised by money or ideology, or the globalists want them for their enforcement arm. So yeah, this is why you see big businessmen working with China all the time. This is why Bill Gates loves China, because he thinks he's going to rule the world in partnership with China. I think he's going to get lined up and executed like everybody else, but that's what he thinks. So, Joe Biden's been working with China since at least 2001, plus Russia, plus Iran. And, Kamala Harris is in their orbit. She's in the orbit of the globalists. She's in the orbit of the street level communists. She's very close to Black Lives Matter, very close to people who are in bed with the Chinese consulate. And she's, in bed with this wealthy business, left-wing business community as well. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, was part of a law firm that had CCP members on its staff, that is deeply in bed with the CCP. So what it is China effectively runs San Francisco, and it runs the Democratic politicians who come out of San Francisco, like Pelosi and Gavin Newsom, but particularly people like Kamala Harris. And that influence extends into Sacramento and LA, and by extension into Washington, D.C. The Chinese have invaded Washington, D.C. through the Bay Area, through California. That's been their main way of getting their people into power. And that's why you had Barack Obama, and Tim Walz comes directly from the Minnesota wing of the same movement. He's got deep ties to China, deep ties to the socialist Wellstone movement, and deep ties to the Minnesota Communist Party. He is 100% on board with the communist agenda.
Wow. So I want to delve into this a little bit deeper, Trevor. You say that you think Bill Gates thinks he's going to rule the world in partnership with the CCP, but you think the CCP is actually playing these people, huh? So they're making cozy with American business leaders, or making cozy with American politicians. But the CCP, they think they're using our American government officials. They think they're using our businesses. And what do the Americans think? I mean, do they think they're using the CCP, or they think this is just a nice, fun partnership?
Well, some of them probably think they do, the high level ones, the globalist types. But most of Wall Street and that, they just want to make money. They just think the Chinese market's huge. China is the ascendant power. America is on the way out. They're just traitors. They'll sell their ground. As Lenin said, the capitalists will fight amongst themselves to sell us the rope with which to hang them. So you got many levels. You got the street level, Kamala's street level people. They love China. They believe in Chinese communism. They support it. That's their thing. This is Black Lives Matter, or the voter registration.
The Communist Party USA the head of Communist Party USA, John Bachtel, went to China and said they have a great democracy and it's a wonderful, harmonious, peaceful, sustainable society. So, that's not even. The
Communist Party USA is completely in bed with China. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Kamala's slogan, "We're not going back," comes from the Communist Party USA. Her joyful campaign comes from Chairman Mao's words, "Brought joy to the people." Her slogan, when we fight, we win, comes directly from the Maoist movement. So this is all her dog whistling to her Maoist friends. Wow. Just like Obama said, in 5 days, we're going to fundamentally transform America. Most Americans thought, that sounds nice, but every American communist understood exactly what he meant. So,
what does this mean, Trevor?
Chinese communism in every direction.
So what does that look like? Now, just hypothetically, let's say Kamala Harris and Tim Walz get elected. What does that mean for an American? What does that mean for the U.S. government? What does it mean for national security? What does it mean for our economy? What does it mean for the world order, the geopolitical situation, All of it. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, what China wants to do is ultimately destroy America and occupy American territory. In the meantime, they are working to get us under their political control. So what Kamala Harris would do if she and Waltz became to power, they would, especially if they control the Senate as well, they would legalize 40 million illegal immigrants.
Yep.
Give them an unassailable Democratic majority. They would then abolish the Electoral College. They would then pack the Supreme Court with 4 more radical justices. They would unleash the gates of hell upon law enforcement across the country. They would destroy existing law enforcement and federalize it. They would keep the borders wide open and bring, I would think, hundreds of thousands of new radical Muslim refugees from the Middle East and put them in nice little conservative towns all over the Midwest to further destroy their opposition's voting base. And everything woke, everything left-wing, the indoctrinations in schools would go into overdrive, and the US military would be destroyed. They've already Obama fired 200 good generals and admirals and replaced them with Princeton sociology graduates, and drove thousands of good officers out with the COVID mandates and the political correctness. So, and the energy industry would also be destroyed, and with their taxation of unrealized capital gains and all this, you would see the economy destroyed. Her job is to destroy America so China can either invade or run us into the ground. So America no longer stands. People need to understand this is a full-on communist takedown if she gets power. She's a communist to the hilt, and she will finish the job Obama started and Trump, God bless him, interrupted. That is how critical this election is.
So I want to explore 2 scenarios.
If people think they'd come back in 2028, you try doing that with 40 million illegal immigrants voting.
Yeah, it'll be what they did to California, except on a national level, a one-party state. Yeah.
And have you seen how arrogant Biden and co have been when they still had meaningful elections to face and they still had a Supreme Court with some teeth in it? You imagine what they're going to be like with no Supreme Court and no possibility of voting them out ever.
So, Trevor, we've only got 10 minutes left before the end of the program. I want to explore 2 hypothetical scenarios. Let's start with Trump wins the presidency. What happens? What should he be doing? And is this something that can be stopped? I mean, could Donald Trump, if he won the presidency, stop this, turn it around, and it's something that would be sustainable, not they'll be back in 4 years and finish the job?
Sure. It's a very good question. Look, I think what happens if Trump wins, the country dissolves into chaos the next day. The left are going to go ballistic. We've got probably 100,000 Chinese, Russian, Hamas, Hezbollah people that have infiltrated across the border. I think there'll be a constitutional crisis. I think Jamie Raskin is going to try and the son of the former KGB front Institute for Policy Studies is going to try and decertify the election and throw the country into constitutional crisis. I think that can be gotten through, but people need to understand, get your medicine supplies, get a generator, have food, get prepared for a period of shortages, outages, and potential violence. Get prepared, get your networks ready, find out who's got the medical supplies, who's got food, etc. But President, we've got to get through that. We've got to hold in through that. And what President Trump has to do is apply organized crime tactics. The foreign infiltration of America is like organized crime. And how you deal with organized crime is you capture low-level people and give them immunity if they'll rat on the people above them. So you got to go after the deep state, fire a whole bunch of people, and start finding traitors. And you give them immunity if they'll rat on the traitors above them. And I also believe you have to set up a new intelligence agency, not drawn from CIA or FBI, drawn from special forces, sheriff's departments, super vetted people, like an untouchable squad that ferrets out the foreign and globalist infiltration. But this is it. If you can give an amnesty like that, you will see a meltdown of all the foreign intelligence operations in America, because the Iranian businessman paying off the senator won't know if the senator's taken a deal and is wearing a wire, and the senator won't know if the Iranian has taken a deal and is wearing a wire. So it wouldn't, with the political will, it wouldn't actually be that difficult to bring down the deep state and bring down the massive foreign infiltration, and use the same tactics on vote fraud, by the way, too. Yeah. Do RICO lawsuits in the big vote fraud operations in all the big cities. So it can be done with the political will, and I think Trump is about the only guy out there with the guts and the political will to do that. So that's what I'm pushing for, and I write about this in some of my books too.
Yeah, and it's critical that people understand that. But Trevor, I want to look at the other possible scenario now. Let's say Kamala and Waltz win somehow. Maybe they steal the election. I don't know what happens, but they end up winning. They head to the White House. What happens? What should Americans be doing? And where do we go from there?
This is the case, I think, where we're going to have to fortify the red states and actually defy the federal government on any unconstitutional moves. Texas has got to work with Florida. Louisiana has got to join in. South Carolina. You've got to get all the red states say, no, we're not going to do this. And, you know, the red states have got the money. The red states have got the productive capability. They've got to basically push and push and fight and fight. I'm not talking physically. I'm talking through all legal means. Impeach Kamala Harris for her communist ties. Impeach Waltz. You know, if that guy's not a Chinese agent, I would be shocked to the core. Yeah. You know, so legal attacks, but fortify the red states. The red state governors have got to stand against these people, and also the red counties and the blue states have got to say, no, we're not going to go down this communist road. We're not going to allow you to stack the Supreme Court. We're going to deport all illegals from our territories. To heck with you, federal government. We're going to send them back to Mexico. We've got to have a peaceful counter-revolution as much as we can. And with a bit of God's help, well, I don't want, I want President Trump to win right from the start. I'm being very partisan here. But failing that is, I think, what we've got to do. Use the 10th Amendment and the First Amendment to recover the countries, and hopefully, God willing, we never have to use the Second Amendment.
Yeah, wow, that's a terrifying picture. One place that people can learn a whole lot more about this, and now would be a really good time to do it, folks. The election's coming up, is Trevor's book. It's available on Amazon. It's called Stealth. I encourage you to get a copy. Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. Trevor, you've been looking at this for a long time. You've actually got books and documentaries exposing some of the other, you call them enemies within, actual communists within our Congress, within our federal government at all levels. How bad is this problem? I mean, it's not just Kamala and Waltz. This is a systemic issue.
Well, if you go to my website, trevorloudon.com, you can see my collection of books there. I've got 4 books on the Congress members. I say there's 100 communist Congress members right now, including all 5 from Connecticut, including over 30 from California, but also Illinois, Massachusetts, Florida, Georgia. They're everywhere. There's about 40 pro-communist U.S. senators. And in Biden's cabinet, as it is now, virtually everyone from Buttigieg to Cardona to Gretchen Whitmer to Deb Haaland all come from communist backgrounds. So we are in a Marxist takeover right now. And my books, as you know, Alex, have been putting them out for a long time, and nobody's ever challenged me. None of them have ever sued me, because I have the archival and documentary evidence to prove it. You don't come to a foreign country and tell the people there that a whole bunch of their leaders are traitors unless you have the evidence to back it up. And so people can get my books on Amazon or trevorloudon.com. But if you want a Kamala Harris book real quick, just go straight to Amazon, It's gone crazy right now. It's now the number one in some of the categories out there. It's selling pretty well. So I hope people will get it quick and share it with your congressman, share it with people in authority. Just get this information out there.
Yeah. And we're down to just a couple minutes left, Trevor. What are some things people can do? You mentioned, get out to the polls, go vote, prepare for tough times ahead, or at least the possibility of tough times, get informed, share that information. What are some other things that people can do, normal Americans in their everyday lives, not just in the immediate term? Obviously we got the election coming up, but over the longer term. I mean, this is not a problem that's going to go away in one election.
Well, I think, I'm reading the left's materials, and they are very worried about losing this election. I think the momentum is going away from the left. So absolutely be involved in this election. Don't think you can sit this one out, come back in 2028. So that's that. We've got to win this. But look, this is a spiritual battle. If your life is in rough shape, sort it out. Get yourself spiritually sorted. Read the Constitution. Start to study. Get actively involved in fighting at a local level in your school. There's a lot of groups out there now, thousands of groups out there active in school boards. And as I know what you're doing, trying to get people out of public schools, promote private education and homeschooling and this kind of thing. We've got to be looking long term here. And we've also got, as I know you've been doing for a while too, we've got to be pushing after the election for Trump to follow through on things like getting us out of the World Health Organization, out of the United Nations, and out of these non-constitutional agreements we have with other countries and between the states. Look, I think we're on the verge of we're on the verge of two revolutions, a communist revolution and a new American revolution. It's going to go one way or the other. And I think with God's help and enough brave and courageous people, I think we can have a positive revolution which will have impact all over the world, not just here. Put the bad guys on the back foot all over the world. If we can get rid of the deep state here, if we can get rid of the globalist institutions here, you'll see that happening in Holland. You'll see it happening in South Africa and Brazil and, Lithuania and every other country around the world. So despite all what I've been saying tonight, I'm actually very optimistic going forward.
And I wish we had more time, Trevor. There's so much more to discuss, but I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for raising awareness. I agree with you 100%. We're headed now into some new territory. We're at a fork in the road. It's either going to go one way or the other. And people who love God, people who love family, people who love their country, we've got to get to work. We've got to be serious about this. This is, it's for keeps, and lot on the line. Folks, go to trevorloudon.com. You can find the book. It's on Amazon. It's called Stealth. And you need to get a copy. Stealth, it's Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. You can find it on Amazon.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State for the New American. Until next time, thanks for watching, and God bless you all. Hey guys, Alex Newman here, senior editor at the New American Magazine. We are headed to Mar-a-Lago for the premiere of The Man You Don't Know, a brand new documentary about Donald Trump, looking at who he is as a person, his family, his life, his relationships, his business. Stay tuned to thenewamerican.com for exclusive content.